Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you here this evening. Tonight we're going to hear what has been advertised as a XXX lecture on verbal violence by Dr. Reinhold Amann. Professor Amann was born and he was raised in Bavaria in southern Germany, studied at the University of Wisconsin and the University of Texas. He received his PhD at the University of Texas in medieval literature and linguistics, and from 1968 to 1974 he taught at the University of Wisconsin. Professor Amann is now a full-time lecturer, lexicographer, and linguistic researcher. He specializes in swear words, insults, terms of abuse, curses, blasphemy, and other maledictions. He has lectured widely throughout the United States, throughout Western Europe, and in South America. He's been on numerous TV and radio programs. He's been interviewed by Barbara Walters and other such notables. And he has been flown to Germany to be on What's My Line, the German version. 1974, he received worldwide recognition, literally, for his expertise in offensive language, for defending President Nixon's earthy language, and for restoring the expletives deleted. Dr. Amann is also the president of the International Maledictus Society. This is a group of professors and advanced students in many different academic fields from many different countries around the world. He has published a dictionary of Bavarian insults. I'm not sure if that's in our library yet, but we can check. He's been working on an international bibliography of verbal aggression for the last 11 years. This should be coming out soon. It's some 4,000 sources. If tonight titillates you enough, when this comes out, you can go at it wholeheartedly as long as you please. And he will publish shortly his maledicted journal. Dr. Amann has researched verbal aggression for 11 years now. He's done work in some 200 languages and dialects, and the research has covered some 5,000 years of history. He speaks fluently half a dozen languages himself, and I guess to finish up, I should let you know that the lecture is tailored to last 90 minutes, and after that time, he has agreed to open up the floor to any questions you might have for 20 or 30 minutes. So without further ado, Professor Amann will now introduce us to hopefully an interesting and perhaps fascinating topic. Dr. Amann.
A refined elderly lady, clad in furs and bedecked with jewelry, stepped out of her Rolls Royce and right into a pile of dog droppings. She looked at her soiled shoe and exclaimed angrily, "Oh shit, I stepped into doggy doo." The lady's reaction and choice of vocabulary illustrate two of the points presented today. First, the causal chain of frustration, affect, release, and second, the prudery and linguistic dichotomy of the educated middle-class and upper-class American. While the middle-class American certainly is not the only group in the world who puritanically and hypocritically divides his or her vocabulary into public and private utterances, think of President Nixon, Earl Butz, and perhaps yourselves, too many Americans have an unhealthy attitude towards earthy language and go to extremes to divide their language into non-offensive euphemisms in their public roles, although they may swear like the lowest stock worker in their private roles. Anyone considered educated who utters a justified and relieving shit God damn, or balls in public is pronounced vulgar and socially shunned. The rich lady just mentioned, who angrily shouted shit, did exactly what came naturally. She used a word best suited by its meaning and sounds to vent her anger. The object into which she stepped, however, was not called the same word, but doggy-doo, a most icky euphemism. Now, is the word shit really vulgar? By contemporary culture standards, yes, but not etymologically, because shit simply means something separated from the body, that is. The Anglo-Saxon root skitan meant what the modern German cognate means, to separate, to divorce. While few so-called educated and refined people would want to utter a relieving shit in public, none of them would hesitate shouting poppycock. It may surprise you to hear that poppycock actually is much more vulgar and disgusting than shit, etymologically. Although the contemporary meaning of poppycock is nonsense, it is derived from the Indo-European roots pop, which means soft, gooey, sticky, and cock, which is shit. After this illustration of semantic relativity, let's leave this shitty topic and turn to the psychological background and to the reason why people all over the world swear, curse, insult others, and engage in every other mode of physical and verbal aggressive behavior. This is now the socially redeeming part, which you have to suffer through to get to the good stuff. Although we have no written proof dating back further than about 3000 BC, we can assume that man has engaged in verbal violence ever since he began to talk, about 4 million years ago. Human beings have always expressed their displeasure with the animate and inanimate world around them, with humans, animals, objects, and unpleasant situations. It would therefore be absurd to argue that there was no verbal violence in pre-literary times. From the moment written documents become available, some 5,000 years ago, we find an uninterrupted stream of evidence of verbal abuse in most languages, be it in ancient Sanskrit prose, in Hittite cuneiform inscriptions, in medieval epics, or the most recent novel or newspaper. Once you tune your ears and eyes to verbal violence, you will be surprised at the flood of terms of abuse, verbal slurs, curses, blasphemy, and euphemisms found in such diverse sources as medieval Japanese dramas, limericks, your local newspaper, except the Light Herald, of course, the Three Stooges, or other scholarly book reviews, which are full of bitter venom. Yet, as contradictory as it sounds, the effective emotive force of swear words and other offensive language is virtually filtered out from our minds and ignored, as evidenced by the lack of understanding of the nature of verbal aggression and the lack of scholarly research on this large and fascinating topic. Although a few brave scholars and laymen have dedicated their lives to collect and interpret offensive language, on the whole, this segment of human speech is still a virginal field abounding with thistles and roses. Some of the best qualified professors are too prude or afraid of their colleagues' opinion. Editors of almost all scholarly journals censor, suppress, and castrate the material they or some reader may find offensive. And finally, too many people suffer from a primitive fear of the word, reacting to the word shit as if it were a pile of foul-smelling excrement. Just think of the following absurdity. A proctologist who handles human waste all day, or a gynecologist who has his hands in all sorts of unsanitary places, or the urologist who handles syphilitic penises. Now these chaps wash their hands at 5 o'clock, walk out, and they are highly esteemed by the society, by their environment. Now we, doctors of philosophy, who merely study the words, we are considered, we are bad-mouthed as being perverts and dirty old men. It doesn't make sense, really. As to the psychological reason why some people use offensive language, we know a number of influences as causes. One's control of the cerebral cortex over one's hypothalamus, our culture, our upbringing, our family standards, our sex, age, religion, profession, habit, peer pressure, and so forth. Neither one's level of education nor one's financial status has anything to do with the absence, kind, or frequency of swearing. Verbal abuse is found on every socioeconomic level, from the hard hat to the mortarboard, from the sewer to the penthouse, from the poorest ghetto child to the richest oil magnate. Of all the factors influencing one's language, I believe it is the relationship between our cortex and our hypothalamus which is most decisive in whether we swear or not. The new brain, or cerebral cortex, which is developed furthest in man, controls our voluntary actions. The hypothalamus, on the other hand, is amongst the most primitive parts of our brain, and it is the seat of our emotions, visceral feelings, and automatic actions. A continuous battle rages between these two parts of our brain, in which the civilized cortex tries to control and bridle our animal hypothalamus, all too often without success. Your cortex lost a battle when you swear, curse, scream, or kick the car or belt the other in the mouth. Conversely, your cortex successfully controlled your hypothalamus when you count to 10 instead of swearing, and when you suppress a desire to buy an expensive car, dress, book, or when you do not follow your natural urge to hug their gorgeous body next to you. The person who controls his or her hypothalamus is said to have willpower, can control himself, is civilized and rational. On the other hand, those who do not or cannot control their hypothalamus are considered uncontrolled, emotional, primitive, irrational, or an animal. In an identical situation, the controlled person is just as angry as the uncontrolled counterpart, but he or she bridles the pent-up emotion and releases it in relatively safe and socially acceptable ways, whereas the uncontrolled person screams, swears, or even physically harms the cause of his frustration and anger, be it a person, animal, or object. Some people have excellent control over their hypothalamus and never show their alter ego in public. Think of Mr. Nixon, who in his public role as a president never gave in to his visceral urges by cussing out or kicking some pain-in-the-ass reporter. In his private role, though, Mr. Nixon behaved as most normal people do when they're overwhelmed by offensive stimuli, namely by cussing, swearing, or name-calling. Many of us do exactly what Mr. Nixon did, but few of us would admit such gosh-awful practices. Swearing and insulting does keep us healthy emotionally and physically, as we shall see in a few moments. Let's first look at the three-part chain of cause and effect involved in any case of verbal and physical violence. Verbal aggression actually is the last step of this chain, preceded by frustration and affect. Depending on the circumstances, this chain reaction may run its course in a fraction of a second, but it may also take days, even decades, until the third step, release, is achieved. For example, an angry teacher may impulsively call his student, "You nasty son of a bitch," but if he doesn't have tenure especially, he may wait a year and until he can get even with a student by flunking him. Or somebody may wait 20 years until he gets a chance to kill somebody who has caused him tremendous grief many, many years ago. Human beings are just one of the four categories of causes of frustration, the others being animals, objects, and situations. A human being frustrating you, in the broad sense of frustration, and thereby making you angry, resentful, jealous, or arousing other negative emotions in you, can be someone else or you yourself. If you do something dumb, like breaking a vase or backing into another car or losing your billfold, you might scold yourself the same way Hamlet did by saying, "What an ass am I?" More often, though, the human source of your anger is another person, such as a teacher who gives an unannounced quiz, the other driver, or your permanent opponent, your spouse. Well, that's only for married people. Unmarried don't understand it yet. While some people have the patience of a rock and ignore all the many possibilities of getting angry, others are bothered virtually by everything all day long from the moment they wake up. The most common animal causing anger is a neighbor's damn dog, either by his incessant barking or by his attempts to help you fertilize your lawn. I lived for 2 years in Texas next to two dogs who started to bark at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I often felt like shooting these two sons of bitches or their owners. But my hypothalamus lost, and those curs barked happily ever after. Very frequently we are angered by objects, especially the technical objects, and we cuss at them as if they could respond. Now the cavemen had different problems, but they were not angered by malfunctioning projectors, by flat tires, dead car batteries, damaged books, or a Jerry Ford TV special. Now, how does a normal, healthy person react to such instances of frustration? He or she becomes angry, of course. Now, we know that the ideal reaction to something upsetting would be no reaction at all. In other words, ignoring the offensive stimulus and thereby avoiding frustration, affect, and a necessary release. But I have yet to meet a person, a normal person, who could withstand a daily bombardment of hundreds of offending stimuli without getting angry at least several times daily. Now, you may know some people who apparently never get angry, but don't let them fool you. They all do. They just control themselves enough not to show any external signs of their internal upheavals. The second step in this chain is affect. It may be defined as a state of physiological and psychological upheaval. As a reaction to major frustration, our body and mind get ready for action, either to fight or to flight. The bodily changes taking place can be observed clinically. Adrenaline is pumped into our blood, our heartbeat rate increases, our blood pressure rises, our muscles become tense, and our stomachs produce excessive hydrochloric acid. External signs of these internal changes are blushing or paling, quicker breathing, perspiration, a pounding heart, a parched mouth, trembling, as well as changes in our facial expressions or bodily posture. Now, assuming that some offending stimulus just call you a goddamn fool or a slovenly bitch, or that some chicken brain just damaged your car, the normal reaction for you is to get angry, to get into a state of affect. You are now comparable to a boiler full of steam with the pressure far above the safety level. You know what will happen if the pressure is not reduced by draining it off into productive pipes or by getting rid of it, that is of the excessive steam, through safety valves. That vessel will become damaged or it will explode. And the very same situation exists with regard to a human being full of excessive emotions. Just as the vessel will become damaged or destroyed if if the excessive steam is not released, the angry human will become sick or even die if he habitually, and I stress habitually, refuses to let off excessive emotional steam through various safety valves. Several times daily, each of us has to choose between expressing or suppressing our strong emotions. Knowing the tragic results of habitual, chronic suppression, it is obviously more recommendable to express one's feelings. Swearing is just one of the modes of release. While it is not the most acceptable relief valve, it is definitely beneficial to our physiological and emotional health. Habitual suppression, that is, always playing the nice, calm, unperturbable person, often leads to serious illness afflicting body and mind, such as tension headaches, peptic ulcers, which are caused by the excessive hydrochloric acid produced in the stomach, perforated and hemorrhaging intestines, also caused by the excessive acid, as well as colitis, hives, and heart attacks. And damages to one's mind and soul are neurosis, psychosis, and manic depressive madness. All these results, am I going blind or is it getting lighter in here? Is it getting lighter? I thought the Lord is playing a trick on me. Damage to one's mind and soul, we just said, okay. All of these results are chronically suppressed emotions are well documented in medical literature. Thus, when I say, a swear word a day keeps the doctor away, I mean just that. Turning now to the third step, release or venting one's anger, we know of at least 5 types of safety valves. In addition to physical and verbal aggression, dealt with shortly, there are 4 entirely harmless and inoffensive means of draining off excessive negative emotions such as anger. The first valve is exclamations. When you bump your elbow, for instance, you may not swear, but release your affect through inarticulate exclamations such as groans, grunts, screams, or shrieks. A second mode is laughing. Yet laughing out loud when something upsetting happens to you has to be done in private, unless you don't mind being considered as weird or hysterical. The third valve is crying, the safest and most recommendable of all reactions to frustration. Yet in our American culture, crying traditionally has been restricted to the female. Males are not allowed to cry in public. They would be considered sob sisters or emotionally unstable. You know what happens when Nixon cried, and Dole and Muskie and Carter. The press made a big hullabaloo out of this, as if they were a little weird or something. In other countries, the males can cry in the street and nobody cares. So although the traditional sex roles limit swearing to men and crying to females, even a woman cannot cry freely without being considered too emotional. Some women, particularly the liberation-minded ones, are now invading our traditionally male territory by crying less and swearing more. A fourth alternative to verbal violence is general activity, that is, to work off your anger through some constructive activities. Some psychologists recommend painting a room when you're very angry, or mowing a lawn, just to drain off your emotions. Of course, there are still other more pleasant activities to drain off your energy when you get angry, but if we would do this, we'd be pooped by 9 o'clock in the morning. Now we come to the most common and universal way of venting our anger, and that is through aggression. Physical aggression towards an offending stimulus may take place spontaneously or in a delayed reaction. For example, the mugger, angered by his victim's empty wallet, may just shoot or stab the victim on the spot. A totally irrational, visceral reaction caused by the hypothalamus victory over the cortex. Just happened 2 weeks ago in Florida. Somebody mugged or robbed an old lady. She had, I think, 25 cents in her purse, so he gagged her and she died. He killed her on the spot because she didn't have enough money. Physical aggression can be directed towards the actual cause of your anger or against the neutral third, a scapegoat, so to speak. Not all physical aggression involves bodily contact between the aggressor and the target. In addition to such means as social distancing the other one by ignoring him, by giving him the cold shoulder, we have a great number of offensive gestures to vent our anger through this type of nonverbal aggression. Perhaps we'll have more time during our question and answer period to talk a little bit more about gestures used around the world. A new one I learned last night. But we look at one of the most common offensive gestures, that is giving someone the finger, now also known as a Rockefeller. This aggressive gesture is not known in most parts of the world as far as I know. The Romans had it. They call it the digitus impudicus, the impudent digit. A gesture meaning essentially the same, that is, fuck you, is used in Southern Europe and South America. But these people don't just fool around with a measly finger. They give it a whole forearm. Hey! Hey! Not just a little finger. Although this gesture usually is accompanied by the utterance, fuck you, it really doesn't mean that the user wishes to penetrate a certain orifice of yours. See how refined I can talk with it if I have to? While some Freudian psychologists claim that the finger user wishes to force his opponent into a submissive, feminine role, I believe it is a gesture of threat, and I have evidence from literature, the arts, and the animal kingdom. What it really means is, watch it, Buster. I'm ready to fight. Don't annoy me, or else. Of course, it is also used as a gesture to express defiance and contempt in the sense of, go kiss my ass. But the primary meaning of threat can be seen in various parallels. For example, in medieval culture, a knight who was ready to enter a combat always held his lance vertical. and I mean he held his lance vertical. This signal meant, I'm ready to fight. And if you know your English literature or any or French or German or any other medieval literature, you know that the kings or the knights associated with King Arthur always are depicted as riding up to the joust, keeping their lance vertical, and just before fighting, they lowered it. But an erect, vertical lance is a sign of, I'm ready to fight. Now, the same vertical gesture of threat can be seen in the animal kingdom. For instance, the baboons in Africa. The younger ones and the females are kept in a circle in the inside where they graze, and on the outside, several males are posted. These are the watch guys, the watchmen. They face to the outside, and as soon as some predator arrives, a leopard or what have you, the male watch guards, they get a penile erection. And you know, the baboons are colored very red at the lower part of their bodies, and the leopard, seeing that, he knows that guy is ready to fight, and he knows that this is a symbol of threat, a signal of threat. Don't go near us, you know, we're going to bite the hell out of you. So you might say the baboon is giving the leopard a finger, or better, is giving him the penis. Keeping this in mind, you need not get upset when someone gives you the finger. Just remember that the other guy is aping a monkey. Okay. I can't be brilliant all the time. Let's now turn to verbal aggression proper. The two large divisions are interjections and verbal abuse. Very often, both types of utterances are combined, as in the exclamation, Jesus Christ, are you a stupid fart face? Interjections can be divided into blasphemous, obscene, scatological, euphemistic, and combinations. For instance, oh goddamn shit would be a combined blasphemous scatological exclamation. Euphemistic interjections are used by little old ladies of any age and any sex, such as poop, darn, and fudge, which are all derived from underlying blasphemous, obscene, or scatological terms. Many cultures have far more colorful interjections than we do. Compare our insipid, oh Jesus Christ, with the Spanish, por los 24 cojones de los 12 apóstolos de Christi, which means by the 24 balls of the 12 apostles of Christ. That's an insult. The Catholics, and I was brought up in a very strict Catholic background, so I'm a good Christian deep down. They are very, very bad blasphemers. The worst blasphemers I found are Hungarian Catholics. I have one insult, one blasphemy that's so bad, even I get goose pimples after 11 years of doing that. But just one example translated from Hungarian is, "Oh Almighty God, stick your shiny ass out of your magnificent clouds and shit on this bunch of assholes." Derogatory remarks, the next group, exist in many linguistic structures and degrees of intensity. A common one is "kiss my ass," which I've collected in 74 languages so far, and we got 6,000 to go. Very often such remarks are hyperbolic, exaggerated, and in the form of a comparison or a simile. For example, "you are as useless as tits on a board" is a derogatory remark in the form of a comparison. Examples of such comparisons from other cultures often strike us as being funny or creative. In addition to being funny, however, such remarks tell us a great deal about the value system of this culture. They are a source of information about any culture, so far neglected by noble academia. Your Professor Warren from the Anthropology Department has just submitted a 40-page article on Bono insults from Ghana, and is getting ready on another 500 from Yoruba, a fantastic collection of abusive, derogatory comparison similes. We have them in English too, but they use completely different images based on the animal world, a different social structure, and so on. Fascinating material. So you have a super maledictor right here, maledictorian. Some examples from German are, for instance, if you want to make a derogatory remark, Oh, they must have lured you down from a palm tree, saying in effect you're a monkey. Or if somebody has a long and sharp nose and you won't insult him, you say, with a nose like yours, you should be required. Oh God. Nothing worse than screwing up a sentence. If someone's a very sharp pointed nose, you won't insult him, you say to him, with a nose like yours, you should be required to carry a weapons permit. A stupid person is insulted by telling him or her, if you were as tall as you are stupid, you would have to sleep in a bowling alley. In all comparisons, one refers to an unpleasant person, object, animal, or part of the body. For example, in my native language, Bavarian, we don't merely accuse the other person of having bad breath, but we picturesquely tell him, du stinkst aus dem Maul wie die Kuh aus dem Arschloch. This is as earthy as you can get, but it's a valid and concrete image from the rural environment, meaning you stink out of your mouth like a cow stinks out of her asshole. Here in the U.S., I found a vaguely similar saying from Colorado, and that is, your breath is so bad it could knock a buzzard off a shit wagon. In Russian, you don't just call your opponent useless, but to tell him, oh, all you are good for is to swing an elephant's balls. Beautiful image. Anyone accusing black Africans or other so-called primitive peoples of being unsophisticated would quickly change his mind after studying their language. In addition to simple derogatory remarks such as, your face is as flabby as an elephant's ass, you find downright poetic insults, such as the one from Beya in Central Africa. Your eyes that are empty, they are like the eyes of a frog that drowned. Now, if you've ever seen a drowned frog, you know how empty and white and watery these eyes are. Or another one is, you are like a crooked spear leaning against the hut, forgotten by everyone. Once again, we find the influence of culture upon the choice of image. A spear is a vital weapon in Africa, but not here in the U.S. And a spear in Africa which is bent or crooked is about as useless and as unimportant too, but it is of a different kind. Now we have, of course, hundreds of the same kind of offensive comparisons in English, but they have never been collected. Our great American collector, Archibald Taylor, he castrated all of his material. And my biggest gripe against American philologists, folklorists, and dialectologists is that they will not record or even print up such material. For this reason, I found a Maledicta in which we print absolutely everything, and our only motto is, asterisk is a dirty word. Occasionally, we find a brave folkloristic journal to print such collections, and the one I can think of who has the only uncensored collection was just put out in Western Folklore by Kathy Orr. There's hundreds of comparisons and similes from Colorado, and I'll give you some examples. You are dirtier than how about some examples from you? You are dirtier than, do you know any? How would you finish that? Say that again. You're dirtier than shit on a board fence. Okay. Anything else? Very good. That's the standard. That's the standard. You're dirtier than a well digger's ass. That's about. I've heard this in Michigan, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, in Colorado, in Texas, and I think in western Pennsylvania. So we have no collections of these. Or he is hornier than a three-pegged billy goat. Or she was as nervous as a dog shitting razor blades. Now this is good, genuine stuff. Or he is so dumb he couldn't pour piss out of a boot, even if the instructions were written on a heel. Now, in cultures which practice the veneration of ancestors, where the family is an all-important unit, we find derogatory remarks such as the Turkish and the Mongolian, "Oh, go piss on your father's head." Or the Serbian gypsies insult, which is never uttered lightly, and that is really a bad one again. It says, "Go screw the soul of your dead mother." You get goose pimples when you hear that the first time, and I mean that. Derogatory remarks about one opponent's mother are very, very common amongst American blacks. Many examples collected in the Philadelphia slums include dozens, which are rhymed couplets, and sounds, such as "your mama eat shit," always picking a mother or sister. Or a rhymed couplet, a dozen, "I hate to talk about your mother. She's a good old soul, but she's got a 10-ton pussy and a rubber-ass hole." This last example is a subgroup of insults in which the first part is a flattery and the second part really gives it to you after you open yourself up. I just heard one last summer from a guy from Chile, the same kind of construction. "Tu madre es una santa, pero tú es un hijo de puta." Your mother is a saint, but you're a son of a whore. The first part good, second part bad. In Yiddish, I found a number of these, and if you want to badmouth your opponent's wife or girlfriend, you can say, "Oh, sie hat a punem wie a Malke, und a Birge wie a Fläum." She has a face like a queen, and a cunt like a plum. Another subgroup are threats. Now, threats are exaggerations of one's strengths or other boasts. Western or frontier tall talk are full of such brags. We use very few nowadays, such as, "I'm going to beat the shit out of you." That's about the only common threat heard nowadays. This bragging is found in ancient Latin literature as well as amongst our presidents. For instance, our nice President Truman, who was a genuine human being, when he was annoyed at a critic who was complaining about his daughter piano playing, he said, "I'm going to kick a guy in his nuts." That's recorded in Truman's biography. And Attorney General, our former Attorney General Mitchell, threatened Katharine Graham, the publisher of the Washington Post, by telling her, "If you print that story, I'm going to put your tits through a ringer." A picturesque insult, a picturesque threat from German is, "I'm going to hit you on the head so that you will look out from behind your ribs like a monkey looks out of a cage," shoving the whole thing down. Maledictions, the next group, wish bad luck, sickness, or death upon your opponent. The most common American malediction is, "Oh, drop dead." In the 16th and 17th century, the golden age of verbal abuse in Europe, I was born 300 years too late, we find many such maledictions in the works of our most esteemed writers and poets. In Shakespeare we find, "May vultures vile seize upon his lungs." And in a 13th century German passion play, a religious play, we find a similar image. "May you get raped by a vulture." Yiddish has hundreds of such maledictions. For example, the well-known, "May all of your teeth fall out, except one, so that you can have a toothache." That's devilish. Or a similar one, good news, bad news again. "May you have 3 shiploads full of gold, and it shouldn't be enough to pay for your doctor's bills." That's a mean one again. In the realm of sickness, we find the Yiddish "platz," which means just burst. Or the less refined, "Oh, go kack mit bleed," shit blood, wishing that the opponent's intestines burst. Maledictions have been used for thousands of years. 2 examples from about 3,000 years ago are a West Semitic coffin inscription of the rich people. They used to protect their bodies by having some curse on the coffin. And the standard one is, "Whoever disturbs my coffin, may he be without seed." A verbal vasectomy, as it were. And the Egyptian legal curse, which became a stereotype, "Anyone who does not follow this decree, may he get fucked by a donkey." That's a standard stereotype phrase which became completely non-offensive because it was used in almost every legal document, beginning with the 23rd dynasty, that's about 945 BC, and it's still used today in Syria. Another category of verbal abuse are addresses, in which you have a noun or a noun and a preceding adjective, such as in you dumb ass. The adjective usually attacks a certain shortcoming of the opponent, such as you dumb ox, that cheap bitch, you hypocritical bastard, or you big mouth bullshitter. All such adjectives fall into two groups: those which attack the target's external shortcomings, his body or apparel, and those which point out his internal shortcomings, that is, flaws of character, moral, or social conduct. Only such shortcomings are attacked which the user considers deviations from the norm. Now, everything which an individual, that is you or your group, considers to be good, clean, beautiful, proportional, ideal, and alike, that is normal. And anything that deviates from this so-called norm is attacked. But norms are all but universal. They change from culture to culture, from age to age, from religion to religion. What a middle-aged white Protestant male considers normal, a young black Baptist schoolgirl from Alabama may consider weird. But we don't have to use such divergent backgrounds. How often do we clash with our friends, spouse, wife, children, colleagues, students, professors, and so on matters of food, taste, music, haircuts, clothing, and so on. All of these clashes are caused by different norms. Everyone thinks his norm is a right one, and the other one is wrong. Man's physical appearance is a frequent target of verbal abuse. Among the tall Americans, my 5'7" would make me a runt. Yet, I would be considered abnormally tall among 5-foot pygmies. And a tall American would be considered a runt among the 7-foot Watusi, or Tutsis. You just can't win. We Caucasians consider the so-called slanted eyes of Asians as unusual, while the Asians really think our round eyes look funny. Some people make ridicule the curly or kinky hair of American blacks, but anyone who has long blonde hair in a group of blacks really looks like a freak. He's the freak and not the black ones. So everything is very, very relative with norms. If you want to see a deviant, look at your neighbor, or look at me. He or she, we all are deviates in a sense that we deviate from the norm in one way or another. If you look at me, you see a bundle of deviations which are all attacked verbally. I'm a runt, I'm a four eyes, I'm a fatso, I'm a commie, I'm a kraut, and of course I'm a sewer mouth. But don't laugh too early. Someone might call you a beanpole, an iceberg, a skinhead, or beady-eyed, fat-assed, or spindle-assed. You just can't win. Everyone is a deviate in one way or another and is attacked for it. If the shortcoming or flaw is corrigible, such as a moral or social shortcoming, the insult hurled against the target might well be constructive and therapeutic, bringing the other one back into line with accepted standard behavior. But if we are attacked for something we cannot help, of so-called shortcomings, such as the color of our skin, our religion, our ethnic background, being illegitimate, a drinker's child, mentally retarded, and so on, these attacks are stupid, senseless, and destructive. This kind of humor is a staple of the primitive mind, of the lowest of low brows, and of course of such a creep as Don Ratface Rickles, a sewer of America. One group of human beings especially apt at detecting deviations from the norm are the children. They observe their environment very closely and almost uncannily find that shortcoming which is their opponent's sorest spot. Children can be pitiless and cruel little bastards in their verbal attacks on other children or unfortunate adults. They pick on the other's pimples, on the thick lips, crossed eyes, a lisp, a foreign accent, a crippled limb, or an unusual name. And the saying that sticks or stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me, that's totally wrong. Children and adults are hit often far, far harder with words than with a physical blow. Now let's turn to nouns. Basically, every noun can serve as an insult depending on the situation, the relationship between the people, the tone, and other factors. One way of subdividing swear words, nouns, is achieved by distinguishing between formal swear words and metaphoric swear words. Formal ones derive their pejorative value through formal or morphological elements such as prefixes, infixes, and suffixes. This group is of little interest in English, as we have almost no such affixes as compared to Slavic and Romance languages. English makes much more use of the metaphoric swear word. This group interests me very much because such metaphoric terms offer the greatest insight into any culture. They contain much petrified cultural history and a teem with puzzling and unexplained terms. This group really offers unlimited opportunities for etymological and other linguistic detective work. Metaphoric swear words are almost always used figuratively, such as, he's a clodhopper, which you really can't use literally, a man who hops over clouds. But in some language you can use them both literally and figuratively, and they have a different meaning. An example, a German metaphoric swear word is Nasenbohrer. It's somebody who picks in his nose. This is a Nasenbohrer. But metaphorically, it means he's a boring, stupid jerk. Because I guess boring, stupid jerks often sit around picking their nose. There must be reasons. Metaphoric swear words have an underlying comparison, which, however, is not always known to the user. Basically, I think the light herald is after me again. Light. Basically, the process of creating a metaphoric swear word proceeds along the following steps. You take a person, animal, object, or plant with well-known unpleasant or otherwise negative characteristics, and you compare your target of attack to it. When you call someone a pig, you are actually implying a whole series of intermediate statements. 1. The pig is an animal which is known to be dirty. 2. You are as dirty as a dirty pig. Shortened, you are a pig. No, you are a dirty pig. Shortened more, you are a pig, you pig, and finally, pig. So the whole underlying structures are within the word pig. The important aspect of a metaphoric swear word is the underlying comparison. In Latin it's called a tertium comparationis, and in English it's also called a shared meaning element. In other words, that certain quality or activity which the target has in common with the animate or inanimate object or person with which or whom he is compared. This shared meaning element usually is known to most members of the language or cultural community. For example, we all know that the pig is dirty. At least that is a common consensus. And it is unimportant whether the animal or the person really deserves the negative characteristics ascribed. But it is important that both the swearer and the target know the underlying stereotyped and negative characteristics. Most animals have only one negative quality, such as the ox, which is considered dumb. You dumb ox. Or the donkey, which means he's somebody stubborn. Or you chicken, which means afraid. But our poor pig has at least 3 negative qualities, as in you dirty pig, or you filthy pig, you greedy pig, that's from a different semantic area, and you fat pig. As soon as you leave your linguistic group, however, you may not know what the term means or what you are being called, because you may not be familiar with the commonly known underlying quality ascribed to the animal or object with which you are compared. You will run into semantic difficulties as soon as you cross your narrow social, geographic, and historical boundaries. We don't even have to go to to Australia to illustrate that point. But how many of you know the very, very common Australian term of abuse, poofter? He's a poofter. That means he's a homosexual. It's a very common term, as we say, queer. But very few people know this. Closer to home, how many of you know the exact meaning of she's a sweat hog? And we're not talking about that dumb TV sweat hogs. How many of you know the term sweat hog? Raise your hands. Not too many. This is a term that's known basically in Ohio and in lower Michigan and in upper Wisconsin. A sweat hog is a very strong anti-woman insult. It means she is an ugly woman, an ugly girl whom you use sexually to work up sweat, a sweat hog. Yes, so the TV people, they don't know what term they're using. They got dynamite there. Now, most whites are shocked by the term motherfucker, and I still get goosepimples if someone calls me that. But to most black Americans, it means nothing more than our white, you dummy. I've seen 8 and 10-year-old kids in Milwaukee saying, hey, you motherfucker, give me a quarter. Just like we would say, hey, you dummy, give me a quarter. It means nothing. It has been completely trained off the very strong negative emotional connotations. On the historical axis, now we had a geographic axis, the social axis, now we come to the historical axis. I'm sure most of you do not know the precise meaning of the English term of abuse, dung heap. He's a dung heap. We'll get to that. We'll get back to that in a minute. Animal metaphors translated from other languages mean nothing to us unless we happen to ascribe the same negative traits to that animal. For instance, in German, when you call somebody a camel, a camel, or a rhinoceros, a rhino, that means stupid. But you don't do it in English. He's a camel, or she's a rhinoceros. In German, a cow means clumsy, a clumsy person, a big, klutzy, clumsy person. But for some reason in French, cow, vache, does not mean clumsy, it means vicious, méchant, a vicious person. That is a very, very strange development, that in one language it's clumsy, and a cow really is clumsy if you've seen a cow. But why would a cow be considered vicious? That's a very interesting development. Or in India, and a Hindi insults you by saying, "Krankaminic," that means you're a whale frog. What does it mean? It really means you're a narrow-minded person, because the image is the whale frog sits deep down at the bottom of a well, and he has a very limited horizon. So this is a very interesting image. In Austria, you call a stupid person a Katznabel, a Katznabel. Means to us it makes no sense at all. And I doubt if any one of you would be insulted if I would say to you Machlu, which is from the Quechua Indians. It literally means unfertilized egg. But what it really means is, metaphorically, you're a queer. So queer is an unfertilized egg. It's very interesting too. A minute ago I mentioned the English term dung heap, which most of you, I would assume, would interpret as a synonym for a heap of garbage or a pile of shit. However, in Shakespeare's time, you dung heap meant, quote, you are a despicable criminal who ought to be hanged. Now that's a strange development. This is where the linguistic detective work comes in. And the reason for this considerable change of meaning, this transfer of meaning from an object onto a person, comes from the practice in the 16th century of burying hanged criminals under a dung heap. Hanged criminals were always buried under a dung heap. So you dung heap does not mean the dung heap, but that kind of person buried below. There's much cultural history, religion, and mythology woven into swear words, unknown to most users of such terms. For example, the German insult, you redhead, somebody who has red hair, tells us that there must be very few red-haired people in Germany, and that having red hair must deviate from the norm, which it really does. Now, I doubt whether this term could exist in Ireland, where reportedly many people are redheaded. You wouldn't attack a redheaded person there because perhaps half or a third of the population is redheaded. In addition, you redhead means that you are horny, lascivious, because red hair is linked mythologically to the devil, who allegedly has red hair and, of course, is hornier than hell. Other examples from foreign cultures show us similar jumps in meaning, which must be traced in dictionaries and folklore and other tools of the linguistic detective. For example, the Italian insult paglietta literally means a little straw, paglietta. But metaphorically it means unscrupulous lawyer, a shyster. Now, what do they have in common? A little straw and a shyster, unscrupulous lawyer. You do some digging again to try to find this tertium comparationis, and you find out that years ago in Italy, the Neapolitan Napolitanian, is that the right adjective? The lawyers from Naples wore a black robe and a little black straw hat. So the straw hat took on the meaning, or the material of which the straw hat was made of, took on the meaning of the shabby business practices of the man who wore that hat. So it's very, very complicated sometimes. In order to illustrate similar transfers of meaning, I'm going to go through about 50 American insults or swear words. With regard to their literal meaning, to their provenance, all metaphoric terms can be classified into such big groups as man, man and animal, plant, object, abstract, and miscellany. In group 1, man, that consists of insults taken from the provenance of ethnic origin, geographic groups, races, religions, politics, professions, family terms, and names. Examples are Yankee, he's a Yankee, he's a Canuck. They belong into the ethnic group, just as do Kraut, Wap, and Bohunk. Such terms normally are taken from the larger, well-known tribes and nations. I doubt whether there's any insult such as you Albanian. Albania is too small a nation to make any. You don't run into too many Albanians, I think, especially not in names. I haven't seen an Albanian in days here. In German, the term "you Russian," he's a Russian, means that you are uncouth and a coarse clod, but it's not used in English. Other terms from a geographic area, Zulu, Kafir, and Hottentot, they are known in England, but not too much in the States. This practice of ascribing negative traits to other ethnic groups, as we nowadays do to the poor Pole, exists worldwide, and it has existed for thousands of years. For instance, the word bugger, he's a bugger. That goes back to the Middle Ages, and it really means literally a Bulgarian. Now it came into the English from the French bougre, in which like the English word bugger, both means a sodomite and a rascal. Just as in Yiddish you can say somebody is a mamzer, meaning a bastard, but also a smart little bastard, positive and negative. So you have a bugger, both negatively and positively. But how does the Bulgarian, how does he get the meaning on the one hand of being a resident of Bulgaria, and on the other hand, someone who practices anal intercourse? The explanation has been found that the medieval Christians considered the Bulgarian groups as they accused them of heresy and of engaging in anal homosexual acts, which they probably did. The Knights Templars, your famous Knights Templars of medieval literature, they were a bunch. The pejorative term barbarian goes back some 3,000 years. The ancient Greeks applied this slur to their neighbors to the east, the Persians, whose language they did not understand. Greek barbaros, coming from barbar, meaning to stammer. So this sort of linguistic chauvinism of ridiculing another language and considering it inferior or a mere stammering is quite common. I happened to read it this afternoon in Professor Warren's new dictionary that the Twi speakers of Ghana also consider somebody a barbarian who doesn't speak Twi. Officially, the Polish word for German is Niemiec, but Niemiec really means somebody who is mute, somebody who is without speech. And this kind of neighborly hatred is even reflected in names of tribes, such as the word Eskimo. The word Eskimo is really a slur. It means raw meat eater, because their neighbors to the south, the Algonquin Indians, considered the practice of eating meat uncooked, raw, as something atrocious, and so they call them the raw meat eaters, the Eskimo. The Eskimo themselves call themselves Inuk, the people. We are the people. And actually, the Eskimos didn't like the Indians too much either in the south. They called them Algonquin, which really means children of a low's egg. So they must have thought that the Indians' practice of keeping the hair they didn't keep the hair very clean. So it goes back and forth. In fact, the word Hottentot is a Dutch word that means a stutterer, and so on. Now, our racial terms, that's the second subgroup of that man division. Gurk, honky, and coon need little explanation as to their present meaning, but we are still completely in the dark as to their etymological meaning. There are some suggestions here and there, but so far I have not found anything acceptable. These terms have never been studied because they are taboo number 4, after God, sex, and elimination. As far as religious slur goes, we have the Catholic, he's a fish eater or a rosary swinger. We have a heap for Jew, and we have a goy, which means both non-Jew to a stupid schnook. But most of the religious slurs, there are very few religious slurs in America, with the exception of anti-Jewish slurs. Other ones have lost their negative meaning, such as Quaker. Quaker used to be a slur, as is Protestant. These were really slurs, but they have lost all their negative connotations. In the political era, we have, he's a commie or he's a fascist. Professions are the next group. Now, professions, this is not to be confused with terms derisive of many professions which are used much more extensively in other cultures and in other language. For instance, in German alone, we have 140 terms of insults for teacher, such as arse thrasher, ink shitter, cheek beater, bone breaker. These are all terms pointing out what a teacher is known for, to beat, to be very hard on the kids. Now I'm thinking of using a name of a profession as an insult, as a metaphoric insult. And I think so far the only universal term of insult I've found, meaning somebody who is uncouth, boorish, uncivilized, is farmer. Farmer, Bauer, paysan, villain. Today again in Tweed Dictionary I found I have several terms for peasant, for farmer meaning uncivilized person. Now this is really a universal term, and not just farmer but all the synonyms such as, he's a peasant, he's a boor, a hick, a clodhopper, a rube, a hayseed, a yokel, and so on. Considering today's farmers who operate sophisticated machinery and every trick on the tax forms, it's really unfair to consider the farmer being stupid. This is really not fair. But this practice goes back at least 800 years. In medieval Europe, this is just one, it also exists in Africa and in South America. But in medieval Europe, around the 12th century, 13th century, when towns sprung up, when cities were developed, the farmer was as laughingstock for the other social groups, for the clergy, the nobility, the warriors, and the townspeople. They all shat on the farmer, the poor farmer. And this antagonism exists still today and just cannot be wiped out. As far as names go, personal names used as insults, French has reams and reams, in my own dialect, at least 24 first names used as insults. But in English, they don't exist. The only 2 names I can think of are Jack and John, as being used in derogatory ways. John is, the toilet, he's a customer of a prostitute and so on. Jack of all trades, Johnny come lately. These 2 terms are used in probably 2 or 3 dozen idioms. Now, why John and not Herbie? The reason is, as I found from the French and from German and Italian and Russian evidence, that if you have a name which is very, very common, it takes on the meaning of averageness. It becomes, blah, John, Hans, Juan, Ivan, Jean. It all means just Joe Blow, the same. Well, Joe is another one, Joe Blow. A very common name again. Another group, now the second group, between man and animal. I think I'm doing that perhaps with a paper. I got some switches here. In the second largest group, man and animal, we find the choicest terms of abuse derived from body parts and from accretions. Others come from negatively valued activities and characteristics such as as well as from historic and prehistoric and mythological creatures and figures. Parts of the body, both used alone or in compounds, are such slurs as, he's a chicken brain, he's a fat ass, he's a prick, she's a cunt. It also means a caveman. witch, and mooncalf. But mooncalf is now archaic or even obsolete in English, in modern English. In so-called primitive societies, you have many more names of ghosts and spirit used as terms of abuse. The third large group, animals, seem to be used universally. However, not all languages use the same animals, and the negative characteristics ascribed to the animals vary from culture to culture, as we remember from the earlier example of cow in English, German, and French. We find wild and domesticated animals, native and exotic ones, and representatives from the entire animal kingdom. In contemporary American English, we use relatively few of such animal metaphors, although many more are used regionally. Nebraska and so on, I have many, many more. Our rural population, and I come out of rural stock and I root for my rural people. The rural population is really linguistically superior to our impoverished city dwellers. You know that there are many people who live in the city slickers, who get by with a vocabulary of 2,000 words out of a possible 500, 600,000. They get by with this. And this poverty in their language is also reflected in the poverty of insults. You know, asshole, jerk, dummy, mother, that's about it. But talk to a farmer from the deep south, from the Midwest, from New England, to have hundreds and hundreds of terms to draw from and to use a very precise insult. So hooray for the peasants. Now some examples from the animal category, going from the mammal down to the insects. Cow, she's a cow. He's a pig. Swine, hog, bitch, snake, goose, chicken, turkey, frog, toady, shark, clam, shrimp, gadfly, jellyfish, amoeba brain, worm, and parasite. On a cross-cultural basis, I found that the animal metaphors pig, ox, sheep, goose, toad, donkey, dog, and monkey are used almost universal. It is curious that some animals are used as slurs, but not others. If an animal has no known negative characteristics, it is not used as a metaphoric swear word. We would say, you rat, but not you beaver. Well, not in that sense. You vulture, but not you eagle. An eagle is a noble animal. You sidewinder, but not you boa constrictor. You amoeba brain, but not you paramecium brain. Now why? I guess people don't know how to spell paramecium. It's one problem. In the plant class, we find again native and exotic trees, woods, grasses, flowers, fruits, and vegetables used as metaphoric slurs. For example, he's a wooden head, a hayseed, she's a wallflower, he's a banana head, she's a pickle puss, and he's a cabbage head. Not only specific plants and fruit are used, but also the entire group, such as he's just a vegetable, meaning he is intellectually and or physically an apathetic person. Now, why the word fruit is used as a term to mean male homosexual, I have not found out yet. Someone, I think it was a lesbian, told me that it comes, she believes, because the homosexuals are self-pollinating like a fruit. But that's too fabricated. So if anybody of you has some hint on that, I'll be very grateful. The next group are swear words from the object category, and they can be subgrouped into tools and implements, musical instruments, clothing, and food. The culture of a given language greatly influences the choice of objects used as metaphoric slurs. For example, hobnail, dumbbell, hamburger, wiener, and slime. The last large class, abstracts, contains very few terms in most languages. People speak concretely. They don't like abstract. And a few examples I can think of: he's a fraud, he's a pain in the neck, or a pain in the ass. But that's about all. In Spanish, you have nausea. Que nausea. He's a nauseous. He's nausea. So these few examples from several thousand metaphoric swear words should provide you with some insights into the semantic shifts and transfers of meaning. Now, time does not permit me to present much more than a skeletal overview of this large research topic, and I have to disregard many matters, including the structure of insults, the combination of adjectives and nouns, there are 4 classes, the adverb plus noun collocations, the dating of literary works by the slurs they contain, offensive personal names, various cultural taboos, the influence of the blood sugar level on the degree of hostility, and much more. All of this will be published by and by in our journal Maledicta. Yet, one such topic deserves our interest before we finish with insults from around the world, and that topic is sound symbolism. In virtually every swear word, be it harmless or offensive, one notices an abundance of certain sounds. These sounds are formed physiologically in such a way that they provide release both of air and, simultaneously, emotion. Specifically, these sounds are the voiceless stops P, T, K, the voiceless fricatives S, Sh, and F, and the voiceless affricates, that's combinations, Ts, X, Ch, and Psh. Fricatives, well, that's phonology. Fricatives such as the S provide a continuous release of air, S, while stops actually stop the air and then release it. You can hear these sounds in the following vulgar and inoffensive terms of abuse. You cunt. You prick. He's a shit. Fuck. Schnook. Pimp. Klutz. Freak. Slut. And twit. You must agree that you punk sounds much harder than you ninny. Or you nerd. Has no stops or fricatives. Now, I'm certain the example I used before, you are as worthless as a cunt full of cold piss, is not only that offensive because of the words used, but also because of that sound symbolism. Listen to them. You're as worthless as a cunt full of cold piss. It's full of those hostile sounds. And I think the sound symbolism may also help us to explain certain apparently nonsensical adjectives, such as, are you out of your cotton-picking mind? Cotton-picking. Or, are you out of your chicken-plucking mind? Now, cotton-picking and chicken-plucking, they really mean nothing, but they provide so much stop-release, stop-release. I think that's one good enough reason, and if you find a better one, I'll be very grateful. Now, finally, before we come to our question-answer period, part of this presentation, let's take a trip around the world in 80 insults. In exotic cultures, as in ours, we find specific groups of insults reflecting that society's morals, standards, value systems, and taboos. For example, incest-related insults are the most offensive ones used among the Lesu, Nkundu, and the Hottentots. You cannot offend a man any worse than by saying to him, go sleep with your sister, or go screw your mother, because these people mean it literally. And they would break the strongest taboo in their culture if they were to engage in incest. But when we say to the other one, you motherfucker, you really don't expect that you engage in that. The same is true of the Russian, yup tvoye mat. You really don't expect him to go and be very sweet to mama. Or the Spanish, chinga tu madre. That's a very interesting topic, why some cultures use this incest term. Now in German you do not have a term Mutterficker, which is the same. It just doesn't exist. It makes no sense at all. Why does English have it? One possibility is that it came in through the Slavic languages, through the East European immigration in the late 18th century, but I think a closer and more valid explanation is that it came in through standard white English, from black English, from the Gullah dialect of, I think, Southern Carolina, which has many parallels in West African languages. You have the mother insult in West Africa. So this may have been the root of coming into it. The size and cleanliness of genital organs are referred to in many primitive cultures. Obviously, we Westerners, fully dressed, cannot observe that closely. The Wik-Munkan tribe of northern Queensland in Australia doesn't just insult the woman by saying, you know, you're a cunt or a twat, but very specifically they say, hey, you with your long clitoris, or you have a clitoris like a pickaxe, which they use in Ghana. Hottentots are very insulted when you call them, hey, big penis, whereas our Mojave Indians resent being called, hey, you with your small penis. So you gotta watch where you insult which way. The Marquesans call one another, hey, you smegma, or less clinically, you with your stinking foreskin. Since the vagina represents the seat of prestige and power amongst the Truckees, it is a very nasty insult to tell a woman, you have a vagina with nothing in it. It means she has lost all power and all prestige in her society. I think Margaret Mead reported that. The Bambara tribesmen are insulted if you say to them, you are an uncircumcised one. And also the Twi, the Bono Twi use that. And the Creek Indians' strongest insult is, you are an old woman, because it means that the other one is not a good fighter and not a warrior. Amongst the American Crow Indians, about the strongest insult is to tell someone, you ghost. Now, would you be insulted if I say you ghost? Probably not. But amongst the Crow Indians, it means you do not belong into our society. You are not a human being. You have no home. Nobody cares about you. In other words, it's as bad as expelling him physically from the tribe. An old man of the Ngonde tribe in Africa is greatly insulted if you tell him, go climb a tree, because this is something he can no longer do. Similarly, the same Ngonde tribe, an old man would be insulted if a little girl just takes off her clothes in his presence, because unwittingly she reminds him of his old age and of his loss of sexual powers. In Persia you can cross your legs. There are so many places you can't do this and that. In South America you can't do this. In Europe you can hitchhike this way in America, but don't hitchhike like this in Ghana. So it's all over the world it's different. The Ashanti are said to be so sensitive to name calling that they may commit suicide upon being insulted. Having a good name, as they call it, is essential to their existence. Malinowski reports the tribe in New Guinea actually has a suicide palm tree for such purposes. When somebody was insulted so badly that he cannot live with that shame, he zooms up that suicide palm tree, which is in the central square, and jumps to his death. I wish we had a suicide tree like this at the University of Wisconsin. Get rid of half of the administrators. It's an in-joke. Calling a Mojave Indian a hairy ass is the same as calling him a half-breed or a bastard, because the backside of a Mojave Indian is hairless. And if he does have hair on his butt, he must have white man's blood in his veins. On the other hand, a Mojave Indian is really flattered if you say, oh, you've got black balls, because in Mojave belief, the more active you are sexually, the darker your scrotum turns. The worst way to insult a Mojave Indian is not verbally, but it's a motor insult. That is, you go up to him and pull back his foreskin. That's the worst insult amongst the Mojave. What it means is you are immature, you are not attractive to women, you have to engage in masturbation. Now you can only top this insult by painting his glands red, because red is the color of women. Now imagine that in Ames, insulting somebody this way. In the winter, it takes you 50 minutes to get to the first 3 layers. By the time, who cares? Chinese eunuchs are very offended if there's even the most oblique reference in your talk about anything that's cut, cracked, broken, or in any other way any other way, in any other way imperfect, like my pronunciation right now. If you should ever drink a cup of coffee in the presence of a Chinese eunuch, for goodness sake, don't mention that your cup has a crack, because they're extremely super sensitive, and this eunuch would immediately feel insulted, having been reminded of his own imperfection of being castrated or having lost his penis. In India, a male is insulted by being called "you rogue elephant" or "you are a useless pony." And a Hindu woman resents being called "you daughter of an owl" or "you have no son." That's a very strong insult in Hindi society. In a 13th century Japanese story, one person is insulted, "you bastard son of a three-legged hunchback without thumbs." Without thumbs. I do not understand what that means. In Malaya, you don't just call the other one a bluffer. You say, "Ah, you bluffer," but you say, "you are like a puffy old boxfish with a blown-out belly and nothing inside it." And to a braggart, you say, "you are only the threatening of a coconut monkey." A Malayan brown-nose is insulted by telling him, "you are a fly who sits at an elephant's ass." The Thai consider it a mortal insult to be called twin. You are a twin, because in that culture, in the Thai culture, multiple births are considered non-human, animal, and mothers who give birth to twins or triplets, many of them are still killed today because they're unhuman. So when you call somebody a twin, this expels him out of a human community. The worst insult I found amongst the Wisconsin Chippewa Indians is animosh or anim. It means you're a dog or a yellow dog. Among the 2,000 insults in Yiddish which I've collected, one finds quite unusual ones based on religion. Now we have an insult on somebody who is very religious or who is an anti-religious. But in Yiddish, East European Jews have a very strong religious culture, and you have about 8 gradations of being very super religious. At Tzitzisbase, somebody is so religious he kisses his, I think it's called a tzilim, the prayer shawl, to the opposite, which is alechaches punem, somebody who is a spite face, literally. So we have a whole spectrum of people from being extremely religious to being extremely unreligious. We don't have it in English. Now, another strange term of Yiddish would be, "you hunk of meat with 2 eyes." So you're nothing but a hunk of meat with 2 eyes. In German, you have a similar one that actually means "you dumb ox," and that is "du Arsch mit Ohren," you asshole with ears. No, just the buttocks and the ears. The male Quechua Indians are deeply insulted if you utter in their presence, "I am a man," because they understand it as an insult that all the other ones are considered effeminates or queers. The Hebrew insult mamzer or the Yiddish insult mamza literally means bastard, but that term is far stronger than our English bastard. The reason is the religious law which was broken by the parents, the man and woman, of that illegitimate child. And an even stronger insult is an extension, that's mamzer benida. That means you are a bastard conceived during menstruation. Breaking one law is being conceived by parents who are not married legally, and it's breaking a second religious law if the woman has intercourse and conceives you during menstruation. In Thailand, they have an equivalent to our "go fuck yourself," and they use a local animal. That would be, "oh, go fuck an elephant." And in order to express that the other guy is too dull to understand, in Thailand you would say, "talking to you is like playing a violin to a water buffalo." Very nice. The use of excrement as part of insults is found in most cultures. We have the offensive ejaculation, eat shit. The Arabs consider it a very gross insult to be told, "oh, shit on your beard." The beard is very important in the Arab culture. You don't touch another body's beard, that's taboo. Arabs use also the animal in a very common insult, and that is, your mother's milk is camel's piss. One of the tribes in Angola finds it very offensive to be told, go and eat shit. So that eat shit and go shit, and that's spread all over the world. It was not planned. The two divergent cultures found of the Cheyenne Indians and the Bedouins of northern Africa have the identical insult, you shit mouth. But this, for some reason, is absent in German. German, a lot of insults are based on shit, but for some reason you don't have that insult, you shit mouth or go eat shit. Why? I don't understand. So the whole field of maledicta is just full of puzzles. Animal feces play a role in the Sioux insult, you are an eater of dog dung, or you just make this gesture. That means chakra, that means you are dog dung. And during the recent upheaval just about 2 months ago in China, the widow of Mao Zedong was publicly denounced as, quote, something filthy and contemptible like dog's dung. But enough of that shit. Earlier, I mentioned the rhymed insults of the American blacks to dozens. Similar rhymed insults exist among the Tzatzil of Central America, in Costa Rica, and in Turkey. In Turkey, if you're insulted by a young Turk, you have to come up with a stronger and a rhyming insult. Such, if somebody calls you hyorj, which literally means cucumber, but metaphorically it means you're a prick, you have to answer his hyorj with a rhymed götüne hyorj. That means shove it up your ass. And I have whole chains of one saying this, the next one has to come up with a rhymed and stronger. Very complex. Now to conclude, a few insults taken from Shakespeare's work. Note the elegance as compared to our monosyllabic grunts. These are all straight out of Shakespeare. Ye fat kidneyed rascal, huge hill of flesh, you swollen parcel of dropsies, you muddy, beetle-headed, flap-eared knave, you green sickness carrion, thou foul bunchback toad, you souls of geese that bear the shape of man, thou slander of thy mother's heavy womb, and thou loathed issue of thy father's loins, which today is an impoverished you crud. Thank you very much. I really expected a standing ovulation.
I think perhaps that might have done something for your post-midterm blahs. And Dr. Amon has agreed to answer a few questions, if there are any.
Loud and clear, please. Well, excuse my smoking. National Lampoon, I look at it occasionally. One of the last issues, I think it was the August 19, well, time is flying. I think it was August 76, that was full of ethnic insults. They took every religion, every race, and just knocked the hell out of them. Now, why do you have something like this really nasty, nasty publication? Or why do you have somebody like Don Rickles? You know, Don Rickles does nothing but insult people who are black or have fat arms or talk with a German accent or happen to have the Japanese name Toshi, you know, which means in Yiddish all the tuches and behind. Now, this must be based on the culture. And I think the reason why Rickles can exist in America is that the general population is so not hypocritical, so puritanical, is so puritanical that they cannot say anything without getting into big troubles. So Rickles, by shouting, by shooting off his mouth, by insulting everything he can insult, especially those shortcomings which you cannot change, like a fat head, buck teeth, or being black and so on, by doing this,
the audience vicariously engages in the same thing. The audience would like to badmouth people. The audience would like to, for once, be nasty. Well, they're not allowed to, but Rickle does it for them. So I think Rickles serves the function in America of our toilet. A toilet flushes away shit, and so does Rickle. So he gets rid of, we drain off all our stuff into Rickles and then use him as a toilet. There could not be an insult publication, an insult comic in Germany, or in France, or in Italy, or in Romania, in Yugoslavia, from the cultures I know. The people use it all the time. I just studied 2 manuscripts for an Austrian television station. There's the Austrian version of All in the Family. And you should see the stuff in there. That would chill the cockles of your hearts. You asshole, oh shit, oh go fuck, everything you can imagine, not fuck because that isn't used in German in that sense, but piss on you, you're a little shithead, just any kind of thing which we would not even print is used on television and in newspapers, magazines, and radios. I happen to see one version there used to be a television version of My Three Sons or so. I happened to be in Germany at the time and watching it with my daughter. Now here in the States, the guy said, hey, there's a ghost up in the attic. In Germany, on a German TV, the translation said, there's ein Scheißgeist im Speicher, a shit ghost. So they added something to make it how people would really talk. So I think the reason is that people are so hung up. Even when they hear the word shit, they get petrified and write heavy editorials and light heralds and so on. Yes, sir. Yeah, I wrote a long piece for the Associated Press on the Blah, Cherry Ford, and our altar boy, who is as fascinating as a dead beaver, but it was only put on the Wisconsin wire. The national editor was afraid I'm going to get into trouble. Well, I'm really a very gentle person, believe it or not. And if somebody gets my dander up, I can really rip it off in any language you want to. While I'm in within my active vocabulary. And I usually insult people. Well, I'm not here to advocate cussing, but when I insult somebody in a way which is a social deviation, something that can be corrected. I don't call a long guy, you're a long shit house or so. Along a scheiß house. I don't do that. But I really try to tailor my insults to the opponent. I don't engage in it too much, only when I get my dander up. The lady behind you. Not just women, not only female, but also male anatomy. And the very, yeah? Well, no, they both are used. And what I found some very interesting parallels around the world. That, for instance, in German, the language of prostitution, they have about 840 synonyms for penis and 640 synonyms for vagina, used by the prostitutes and the pimps. In English, where there are about 1,200 synonyms for penis and vagina in Farmer and Handler's dictionary. You won't find vagina under vagina, you find it under monosyllable. The interesting thing is, when you look at what the synonyms used for penis, you find out that most of them are instruments of piercing, of hurting, of destroying, of giving pain, of giving death. I found it as far away as the Ilocano in the Philippines, that the man or the man's penis is considered a kriz, some dagger, or a spear or a lance. Or he's considered stupid. The word for stupid man in English is a stupid prick. In Yiddish is a schmuck. In German is a schwanz. In French, con is used both as a cunt and it also means cunt and prick. But a male is usually considered stupid and a penis, and a woman is usually considered sneaky and treacherous. Now, this is the war between the sexes that really exists. Male is the stupid schnook who always gets trapped by the female. Or he is the brutal guy who damages and destroys the trap. The only exception I found in another Philippine tribe in which the woman is not considered treacherous, mean, and nasty, but she has synonyms meaning vegetable garden, fruit-producing trees. She's the life-giving image. And a man is the life-taking image in that one group. But that tells you much about the culture, what they think about, including a word for intercourse. There are many synonyms for to have intercourse. Every culture has different words. And again, I have not looked in too many cultures because there are very few collections available. They've never been printed. And this is what we want to find out. What, for instance, let's say, Mongolians, what terms they use for sexual intercourse and for their genitals, and looking at what synonyms they use, out of what semantic field, you can really tell much about the value system of this culture and what men think about women and vice versa. This is a tremendous key to open up the culture, because it's the deep down, the really gutsy emotions, not just the superficial blah emotions. There was a gentleman. Okay, both exist. I think both happen to me. This collection by Cassie, or he's as useless as tits on a board, or tits on a boar, the male animal, or as useless as tits on a broad. This is a metathesis. Board and broad is a metathesis. R, vowel, vowel, R.